All right, let's move on to this next news story. This is, I'm going to start with, no, you know what? I'm going to read this one. Coming from Bloomberg, written by Jason Schreier, Inside the Making of Redfall, Xbox's latest misfire. That's the main article. You know what, though? There's a lot going on here. I'm not going to read this whole thing. So I think what I want to do is go read that, go check out that article. I like what Paul Tassi over here did out Forbes. He kind of recaps it very well. So go check out Bloomberg.ca. That's the trick that Adrian showed me. And
don't tell anybody else, all right? You guys?
Go read Jason Schreier's.
We read this on Bloomberg.com.
Right. Jason Schreier's article all about Redfall with a connection that he had. But Paul Tassi writes, Redfall is the worst reviewed major release of 2023 and a black eye on Microsoft's first-party ambitions. A truly terrible game from a studio that previously produced greatness. What exactly went wrong here? Well, who was a better tale than Bloomberg's Jason Schreier? Schreier has once again dug into a struggling, in this case, failed game and found what appears to be a combination of managerial incompetence when first conceiving Redfall and then a hands-off approach from new owners Microsoft when they might have avoided this altogether with some decisive action. The report, which I highly suggest you all read here, so definitely go read the full report, but talks about how Arcane was confused about being asked to make a multiplayer game in the first place, which did not lend itself to their traditional style of gameplay. It was also the plan for several years during its development that it was going to be a live service multiplayer game with microtransactions. Oh, woof. At release, the game did not have an in-game item shop, but it did promise future live service aspects, including 2 new sold separately classes. It's unclear whether those plans are still moving forward. When Redfall was released and scored badly, the game's developers were not surprised. The project had been pulled into too many directions, pushed into territory the developers were uncomfortable with, and chronically understaffed compared to larger live service games. But perhaps the most eye-popping quote of the entire piece is about Microsoft. The acquisition gave some staff at Arcane hope that Microsoft might cancel Redfall, or better yet, let them reboot it as a single-player game. So this game was in development before the acquisition. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, and it sucked in.
Yes, exactly. So that, they were hoping Microsoft would can it when they bought them, so that way they could make something different. Right. Or better yet, let them reboot it as a single-player game, which makes sense because that's their style.
It would have ruled as a single-player game, yeah.
According to sources familiar with the production. Instead, Microsoft maintained a hands-off approach. Aside from canceling a version of Redfall that had been planned for a rival Sony Corp's PlayStation, Microsoft allowed ZeniMax to continue operating as it had before with great autonomy. So it was originally supposed to come out for both PlayStation and Xbox, which makes sense because Bethesda was multi-platform, or ZeniMax was multi-platform for the most part until recently purchased. Yeah. But yeah, Arcane was hoping that Microsoft would step in and overrule their bosses, either canceling the game outright or at least letting them reboot it so it was back in their single-player comfort zone. Microsoft did neither, and Phil Spencer would later say that they didn't do a good job engaging the studio. If this felt like a game that probably should have never seen the light of day, that appears to be a sentiment at least some people working on it seem to share. The saddest part of the story is that 70% of Arcane Austin no longer works there, and it appears the studio that made Prey may not really ever exist in the same way again. That's the larger tragedy here, rather than producing a bad game, which was not the fault of the workers, but poor management dictating a bizarre trend-following pathway, and Microsoft making the wrong choice in a trolley problem once they acquired the publisher. Hopefully, we do not see a repeat of this in the future with their own newfound first-party devs. So what a wild report. And again, you can get the full report from Jason Schreier over at Bloomberg, which has more just kind of, a lot more detail in each of these things that are mentioned here. But hearing this, it's one of those things kind of like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like you can play this game or watch this game or however you digest or ingest this game. And it's very, now that they've said it, it's like, oh yeah, it is obvious that they didn't care. There wasn't care put into textures in the world. There wasn't care put into a story in the world. There wasn't care put into gameplay in the world and the bosses, they
didn't want to make it.
They didn't,
They didn't want to make it.
And the fact that people have flat out come out and said we didn't want to make it. We were hoping it was going to get canceled every step of the way. What a horrible way to live. What a horrible development cycle. That just sounds like hell. I don't know.
I wouldn't
wild.
be surprised if most of those departures happened after Microsoft said, no, you're going to work on this and we're going to put it out. People were like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I'm out of here.
People who are just sick and tired of dealing, like, they're like, we don't want to work on this. So instead of.
Right. We already didn't want to make a multiplayer microtransaction game. That's not what we do.
Yeah.
And now you want us to continue, even after we told you we don't want to make this. We have to make it and put it out.
Yeah.
No, it's curtains. I'm out.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely wild. You still have not given it a try at all, right? Okay.
No. I have a question for you, though.
Okay.
Well, A, have you, number one. And then B, do you think that Microsoft is using this position of, oh, we're very hands-off with the studios that we have ownership over? Do you think that's a guise or like a Obi-Wan half truth of, yeah, we're hands off, but that's because we're spread too thin to try to keep tabs on all the studios that we have. So let's spin it and say that we're hands off. You get what I'm
saying? The problem is it's hard to know
because Arcane in that article, Arcane talks about how Microsoft was really barely involved.
Yeah.
Or they didn't show a whole lot of support during development or anything like that, really. So that's what makes me think that their idea of saying or trying to salvage being hands off is, hey, we really can't support 27, whatever different, however many thousand studios they have at the same time. So we're just going to brand it as, hey, we don't bother you.
We give them creative freedom.
Right. In reality, look, dude, we're overworked. Yeah. We're too thin. We can't send people out there. Okay. So, I think that might be what's going on.
So my only thought is it's hard to really know for sure yet. Because like they were saying, this game was in development before ZeniMax was purchased by Microsoft. So I think until the second round of games come out that were actually started by Microsoft, then we can know for sure. Because if they continue that quote unquote hands-off approach, because the problem is they could have kept a hands-off approach because they bought these studios and they trusted these studios, and so they're like, oh no, of course we're going to let you finish this project because you've proven yourself in the past to be good, you know. And so
right, but if I told you I didn't want to make it, right, and you tell me, well, we still want you to do it, the correct response to that should have been, we'll help you to do it, or yeah, we still want you to do it, and we'll give you the resources and people needed so that you can turn this into what, you know, the best version of whatever this is for you to put out. Yeah. If I'm Microsoft anyway. I
haven't read the entire report from Jason, just a little bit that you just sent me here right before the show. Because I was under the impression they didn't necessarily tell Microsoft they wanted to cancel. They were just hoping it would be.
Oh.
So that's my only thought is like Microsoft might not have had any idea. I think Arcane assumed they would get canceled because that happens a lot. A new studio gets acquired, and whoever the new parent company is, just goes, cut, everything's gone. Like, we want you to make...
You're working on this now.
Exactly. So, again, I haven't read the entire Jason Schreier article to know specifically, but according to the Forbes report from Paul Tassi, that his interpretation of Jason's article almost made it sound like they didn't necessarily... Because that was one of their complaints, is like, even the managers at Arcane weren't willing to communicate with, like, they were siding more with Microsoft, and so they weren't communicating what the general work populace was wanting. So for all Microsoft knew,
which is crazy.
Yeah, right. Microsoft might not even knew at all that there was a kerfluffle, because when they did check in, they were checking in with the managers. The manager's like, hey, everything's good. And then and the workers are like, no, tell them we want to cancel. Stop it. So
that would also explain why Phil was so upset when he had to talk about it.
Yeah.
Maybe they sold him one version of development, and then the closer they got, when he came down to look at it, he was like, hey, yo, this sucks.
What the heck
How come
is
you didn't
this?
say anything? Right. And it's too late now. We already printed the disc and the box and all that. They're already at the store. Yeah. Thanks a lot, dude. Now I got to go and try to salvage this, you know?
Yeah. So again, I recommend going and reading just Jay Stroud's full article because he might have some of those details in there. But I just wanted to really focus on just like, wow, it's so sad that like they're basically just forced to make this game and hated it every step of the way. Like I couldn't imagine.
And shuttered themselves at the end of it.
Just, shot like really just kind of shooting themselves in the foot for whatever the next project is. Like not, and again, not to their own fault. Like they're a fantastic studio. They just had to make a live service game, and they're a single player story driven studio. Like that's what they do. Like what was ZeniMax thinking? That's what I want to know. Like because it was started off as
Fortnite makes a lot of money. Let's do something like that. Yeah. The same thing every studio thinks.
I guess.
You see that Fortnite game? They're making a whole lot of money. Why don't we put that in our game? And then we'll make a whole lot of money too. Granted, our game is usually dog crap.
I'm just trying to think though, like what are all the studios within? Because ZeniMax has to have a studio that's much better at multiplayer, right? Like besides Arcane, of all the studios.
I'm not sure. I know they have Bethesda Game Studios.
So they have.
I know they have id. Yeah. They have Machine Games. Tango. Arcane.
So actually, I'm looking at this list. Other than ZeniMax Online, they don't really have any multiplayer studios. Like most of these make single player. Yeah. So it was kind of, no matter who they picked, it was kind of not a good choice.
Chasing trends, man. I'm so tired of it. And that's also, I know it's unrelated. That's what makes me worried about this big Sony Bungie initiative that they're doing, where I guess a big part of Sony's portfolio for the next year is they want to start chasing or have the majority of their catalog being just throw live services at the wall and see if one of them sticks.
Oh yeah, what was that new one from Bungie? It looked cool, but I mean, like
Marathon.
Yeah, like
same deal. That's one of them too.
Yeah,
throw it at the wall, see if it sticks.
Yeah.
And I think we didn't talk about the Naughty Dog game getting delayed. I don't think.
No, we didn't have a show last week, so with that, and like we didn't talk about the PlayStation Showcase at all. Unless you go watch our reactions, which is up on YouTube. You can watch our reaction. It's over on youtube.com/Super Gamer Boys to see our full reactions to the whole event and a recap at the end. But my quick thought on that is I would honestly rather them cancel it at this point. I don't want their compromised vision of whatever this is going to be, like they were talking about, where I think Jason, again, was one of the ones who reported on this and said that the size of the team and the scope of the vision has been reduced dramatically. Yeah. I would rather them just cancel it. I don't want to see the compromise. I want to see what they originally were going to make. So if they can't do that, I don't want it. Yeah, it's so wild to me. Like, these are very competent studios, both Arcane and, speaking of Naughty Dog from the news last week that we heard, it seems so wild that either one of these studios would like even just entertain the thought of putting out a half-assed product. Like, right. They know better. They are like, these are studios we look to when we want like the pinnacle of quality. Like Arcane is like made Prey and Dishonored and Deathloop. More recently Deathloop. Like all very, very fantastic games. Naughty Dog hasn't missed with Uncharted games and The Last of Us, and before that, like Crash Bandicoot and Jak and Daxter. And like this incredible games. It just seems wild to me that like, these studios are all of a sudden like fumbling the ball a little bit, and it's like, well, we can.
It's because they're being given directives to do something like that they are A, not used to, and B, don't want to do.
Yeah.
Do you really think Naughty Dog wants to make a live service multiplayer game? Given their track record?
No,
they make multiplayer games. They make multiplayer modes, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in the interviews, obviously, like they make it sound like what's his name is, why can't I think of his dang name? The guy from Naughty Dog, like the man.
Druckmann?
He makes it sound like it's his idea. He's all stoked for it. But yeah, I think you're right. Like a multiplayer mode is one thing. But to make a full-on game, like that's a completely thing entirely. And I think that's like, yeah, I don't know. It again, that seems like such a backwards thing that Naughty Dog would ever do a live service multiplayer game, just like Arcane doing a live service multiplayer game. So yeah, I'm with you. Now, the more I think about it, it's like, yeah, like just shut it down. Like, it's fine. Like, just whatever you've developed, roll it right into whatever The Last of Us 3 is going to be. Use that technology to just like amplify, either add a multiplayer mode to Last of Us 3 that it incorporates these elements, or just like whatever. Because they have talked about Last of Us 3, right? Like most likely happening. I think there are some rumors going on where like,
yeah, I think it's on the table. I don't know if they've 100% like committed to it, but even still, even with that, Last of Us 2, I feel like you've kind of missed the window at this point, right? We're 3 years out,
right? Which is why they'd have to
Last of Us Part 2.
Yeah, where if they did do a multiplayer, continue without train, like just add it into whatever The Last of Us 3 is in another like 4 years or something, 3 years.
Because I don't think this is. I think if they release this as Last of Us Part 2 additional content, it's not gonna hit. Just because of the length of time that it's been since Last of Us 2.
Yeah.
Not because it's not a good game, but people have moved on. There's other Sony exclusives coming out in the near future. So I don't know if this would have been the best time to actually do that. So
yeah. So man, I hope whatever.
It would have been more closer towards launch.
Right. Well, I hope whatever, back to Arcane, whatever they put out next, I hope they can get back on track. Like, I hope now that Microsoft, now that their voice is being heard, finally, now that the game's out, be like, hey, we didn't want to do this. I hope Microsoft's like, okay, let's get you back to your roots. Let's get you back to a single player story. Let you like do what you do well and very, very well. So hopefully it was
also
heard
hoping that
loud
the
and clear.
remainder of that 30% who's still there is maybe the higher ups. Because if you don't have higher ups to continue the Arcane vision and keep that standard of quality, then they're Arcane in name only.
Right. Yeah. Again, they could come out with a single player game next and it could be trash as well, because the heart and soul of the studio could be gone. So time will tell. Hopefully, hopefully it's, only looking up for them. But yeah, we will see. Thank you so much for watching that clip from our podcast. Remember, if you want to watch the whole episode, the full episode, link will be in the description below. You can click on that and check it out. We got listener questions. We got more news segments. We got what you playing. We got a lot of fun things. So yeah, more than just the news. There's a lot more to the show that you should go check out. So remember, click that link in the description. Check out that full episode.